So I go, okay, but you still want your snow shoveled, you still want your potholes filled. And, one of the truth in taxations, I think it was a couple of years ago, a lady literally stood up and said, taxation is theft. Why haven't you filled my pothole yet? And I was like, huh, don't get it, do you? So that's the real problem with, I think, a lot of these, I don't say uneducated, but people that don't understand the process. And I'm glad that we keep doing this, and I'm glad that newer people show up or at least listen. Trent was online for a little bit. He was, it was hard to hear, and I know it, this thing, it just goes all over the place. But at least we're trying, and I think that's the key thing. And I appreciate this from having different perspectives because everybody has a different thoughts on what they want to do. And Brian and Mike have been great, and Sandy's been instrumental in some cases to say, why are you doing it that way? It's stupid. So let's change it, So everything's on the table. Don't be timid. This is a place to be heard, just tell Brian to shut up so you can say something, and then we can move on.
I respond that way too, it's fine, you won't hurt my feelings.
I figured I'd just sit and listen for a couple of times, trying to figure out.
Yeah, I like being on a fly on the wall, and then once I understand things, then I can start yelling at people. But anyway.
Well, one thing that was very informative for me was understanding how government accounting works versus the private sector. It's totally different. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to start asking some of those questions too.
Yeah, and the enterprise funds, you can't just trade money whenever you want. Going back and forth to the general fund. I read something about Ogden was doing something. I was like, what? But you can't just do it whenever you want. You have to get it approved, right?
You have to do a public hearing, and
Yeah.
it's the budget process,
So anyway, it's something that I'm still learning, but that's the whole point of why we're all here, is to understand what we can do better. So.
And then just one final thing I'll add, and it's talking about fund balance. So most of our funds, especially enterprise funds, have a balance, means there's money that's sitting there waiting to be spent. And that's part of the city's strategy to pay for these large projects as they come due. The city general fund also has two types of fund balances. One is just the general fund. We've got about 20 to 25% of our projected revenues. So that's about $2 million is there. It's a rainy day fund for when we need to keep the lights on and there's no more money coming in. And then we also have the capital improvement fund, which is where we do all of our big projects out of. And there is a fund balance in that as well. And it goes up and down as projects come in and go out. And then there's some others that have balances, like impact fees have balances and things like that. But those are the main kinds, those three: the enterprise fund balance, the general fund, and then the capital. Those are the ones that really are impacted most on a daily or on an annual budgeting basis. The state mandates that the general fund can't have more than 35% of the expected revenues sitting in its fund.
Who regulates that? Do they actually check it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the auditor. So when we send in our audit report, it's one of those things they'll verify, and the state auditor will write you up if you don't. And we are mandated to have at least 5%.
And how much does North Austin have right now?
So it's just over 2 million. So it's right around 20 to 25%. Yeah.
And is that invested, or is it just sitting in a money market?
It's the investment is regulated by the state through the PTIF fund. Well, probably wisely so. There was a couple cities that got themselves in troubles in the 90s and early 2000s because they were invested in just stocks, and those stocks lost all their value. So the state says, no, here's how you have to do it. And if you want to go outside and do treasury bonds and things like that, then you have to use one of these approved financial advisors. And so we do have some money that's sitting with a financial advisory group to see if they can do better than our PTIF fund. PTIF fund is just it's the Public Trust Investment Fund. That's managed by a state group. They manage most of the state money, and they've typically outperformed our other group and we have about 25% of our money with the other group and 75% with the PTIF. And the PTIF fund just seems to keep crushing it. So, but when interest rates are low, we're getting like 1.5%. When interest rates are high, I think last we got 4.5. That sound about right?
0.4, 0.55.
And Casey, the treasurer, is the one who manages the investments for us, and through Meter, who's the investment firm as well as the PTIF. And then we typically, just so you're aware, most of it is in long-term or more secure investments. We do have some in checking because we have to make the bills float and payroll float. But Casey's moving money in and out of the PTIF fund and our checking account to make sure that we've got enough to make our check run payments or our payroll. And it's just kind of a constant game that Casey plays.
Do we reinvest that back into that fund?
Yeah.
Or- So we're not using the interest money?
So we have a line in the budget that shows the interest, and then the council can decide to either use it or just park it. And then one other thing that typically has happened every year is that the projected revenues or the actual revenues come in higher than the actual expenses by the time the accountants get done finalizing our year-end statements. And what we do with that money is it just goes into the fund balance. And then it either goes, and sometimes we'll put it in capital, or the council will put it in capital. Sometimes they'll just put it in the general fund, and then it gets spent in future years, depending on what the council's priorities are. And the highest, I think one year, I think we actually got just over $1 million, where expenses came in like 300,000 or 400,000 lower than we projected, and revenues came in 700,000 higher. And so we ended up putting a significant amount into capital project at that time, was the decision of the council. So. And that's it for my 1-page summary, but I just would highlight one thing that'd be really helpful for this group is to have a conversation about the 4 pillars that the council has kind of highlighted. And if there's any recommendations you have on the pillars, or if this group wants to suggest that one of the pillars gets swapped out for a different, priority, that's well within the purview of this group, can kind of help the council understand policy or make policy recommendations, I guess is the way to say it.
So are the 4 pillars, I know she had come up with a 2-page thing. Is that something that's online? I was gonna ask her, but I don't see.
I think so. Yeah,
Are they? Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask a hard, uncomfortable question, because Chris said to do that?
Mhm.
Okay, this is for you guys over here. So this is a citizen budget committee. All of us citizens are not being paid. My understanding, everybody over here is currently city staff being paid. So my question is, does this meeting bring value to you guys? Or is this a time filler? Because as we are looking for areas to try and save money on the city budget, if you guys are so busy, don't come. So I guess my question is, does this meeting bring value to you guys, and what is, and you don't have to answer, I know the finance guy, I would expect him to be here because it's a finance meeting, but I think that's a fair question, so.
I'll answer for you.
Yeah.
From my perspective, yeah, absolutely, it brings value to us because it gives us an idea of if these are really, like, if you're, as a group, decide that this is a priority for you and that you're gonna recommend something to the council, then we can get ahead of it and start, if that looks like it's gonna be a priority, then we need to make sure that that's how we're going to plan our budget that year.
Good.
And start using it towards those priorities. And so from my perspective, it's almost a crystal ball that we're able to see what you guys are looking at as priorities alongside, the pillars that the council puts in front of us, and so that we can kind of balance all of that. So when we're planning our budgets.
And it's happened without even being said sometimes, that if you come up with a good suggestion or just an idea and staff goes, I like that, and there's nothing that says they can't go do it, they go do it.
Okay.
I've seen that. And I was like, yeah, I recommended that. And they just went and did it, and that's why John says, don't email them without CCing me, because sometimes they'll just take it as a task But, you know, anyway, but if you're just talking in a meeting and you say something and it sounds like a good idea, and they're like, holy crap, that is awesome.
Or something like unto it.
Right,
Yes.
no,
Right.
I'm like, I was thinking last year, it seems like some of you guys would show up occasionally, so I was a little surprised to see 7 people in here at this meeting when it's kind of an introductory meeting, and so again, I'm not trying to come at you guys too hard, but I feel like
Especially when you're here, they're making sure that,
they may not wanna come when I'm
Yeah.
there again, no.
no, but it's a good idea, and I think for the most part, they pretty much self-regulate. It's like, between a dog and a cat, you can put a cat bowl out and fill it with food, dog can't do that. I think.
From my experience, it's important that they're here.
Well, they can answer questions too, because John's
Yeah.
sometimes like,
Yeah, I definitely don't know everything, that's for sure.
I mean, hopefully it's not impacting their performance outside, but seriously, from my experience, it's valuable to have them here.
Dave usually gets to the city at like 6:30, so technically he should be home by now, so. But yeah, it's definitely not, because I think that's one of the stereotypes that sometimes is true about cities is that it seems like there's a bunch of time wasters. I know Dave's doesn't let his folks get away with that, and I think that, you know, sometimes the stereotype comes from some of the OSHA requirements. You know, you see some UDOT guys working and one guy sitting there leaning on a shovel. He's technically required to do that because they have to have one person whose job is to simply watch the safety of the site. And so but don't ever feel, because anyone who comes in this room is going to have thick enough skin that they can handle direct questions.
Okay, and maybe my final question is, are we primarily focusing on the general fund? Or do we get involved in the enterprise funds and the fees they charge? And,
Yes, well, in both, for sure. General fund is just,
I mean,
The-
general fund is such a critical thing, I mean, and volatile, but.
and the enterprise funds operate more like a household budget does,
Yeah.
right? I get this much money, so I can spend this much money and I plan for the future. The general fund, to Mike's point, has some nuances in it that, you don't, I mean, you've heard of depreciation. General fund doesn't have to depreciate its assets. So the roads, the buildings, the parks, we don't depreciate those because we couldn't afford to, quite honestly. So the city has about $100 million worth of general fund assets, another 50 million of enterprise assets. And enterprise depreciates theirs. They have to account for it, which is part of the reason fees can be a little higher. General fund doesn't. If we did, then the whole world would, everyone would be taxed into oblivion. Cause
I thought we were
it's expensive. Well, and I do want to say that
go back east.
oftentimes, but I think it's a fair concept to say everything that's a fee, a tax, or anything that comes out of a resident's pocket, it's okay to call it a tax or a fee. I won't get too hung up on the nuance of it, and Peter won't either, because it is money that residents are having to pay to be in our city, and so we need to be sensitive to it all, including the water utility fees, and everything that just is impacting that monthly budget of the residents who live in our city.
Do we want to talk about a citizen chair? Well, we have to, but is there any thoughts on?
Bill. He's not here. He
I
gets
know,
voted.
All right.
Consultants vote for him and it's him. He did a good job last year. He's the most experienced, I think.
But what happens if someone present here gets a position somewhere? Are they still gonna be part of this committee?
You're the backup.
So
What are you saying? Like,
if
on a city staff?
There's a council position
Oh.
open, there's a couple of planning commission positions open. You don't know that I haven't applied for both of them. What if I get one of them?
What if you get both?
Do I?
well, you can't get both. Statute won't let you. But so legally, anyone on the planning commission could stay on this committee. Anyone on the council can stay on the committee. And it would be up to the committee whether or not they're
Chair.
voting members.
Okay.
You know, if someone got a planning commissioner, for example, Those roles are so independent, this group and the planning commission, that there's not a big difference, but
Someone
Yeah.
asked me that before I
Yeah.
came today,
And-
so.
the idea that, like Chris mentioned earlier, that typically he hasn't voted, right? Because he gets to vote when he
Yeah,
votes
he's
on the
vote-
council, so I think that's been a healthy way, so if one of you ended up on the council, then it's probably, you can stay on the committee, because we can have two without turning it into a full board council meeting.
But you'll know my opinion.
To your
During the
question,
meeting.
let's just wait on the chairperson there, I think.
So I'll just, yeah.
We've
we'll
got a
just-
lot of information to go through, and then really last time we just picked a person to present it to council.
And that's-
Fine.
And it's for everybody. I guess that was one of the questions I had that I was gonna wait, well, I can talk about it now. What do you want sent out email wise to review, or, cause I know some people already have stuff from last year that they can go through, but I mean, what,
Do we have an
Yeah,
agenda
that's
of
what I'm
what the
saying.
plan is gonna be? Like, what are we gonna talk about in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or,
no,
okay? So who is the chairperson, the one that's gonna be responsible for setting that agenda, or is that you?
no, it's everybody. So, I mean, what you guys wanna talk about usually comes down to when it's gonna be brought to the council.
So for the next 2 months, I don't wanna say you can talk about whatever you want, but there's not gonna be anything deadline wise that you'll need to get through. Because we'll start talking in March about the individual departments, right? And so we might talk about public safety the second week in March, and I think it'd be good for this group to talk about it before then. But as far as, the first meeting in February that this group is gonna have, whatever you want to talk about.
I think you just made a suggestion and I wanna second that. Public safety, why not?
Okay.
Any opinions on that? I mean, that's number one pillar of the community. I think that's great. Let's just start there.
So do we wanna send out yellow sheets or the current budget or both or
Well, so one thing that I think would be really helpful.
last year? I mean, obviously not this year, last year.
One thing that'd be helpful, I think, is to really focus a little bit when we're talking on the department's general fund, is to talk about kind of what, like, the department had have some discretion over, and the stuff they don't. And we've already talked about a little bit, but really the department heads don't have much discretion over salaries. Because that comes from the city council's salary discussion,
And what's the biggest expense to the city?
is salaries, yeah. And so I would suggest that maybe not next meeting, but as one of these meetings, it'd be good to have that conversation so that everyone can understand that process. Because it's helpful for this group to provide some feedback to the council, since it's the largest thing.
That
But
would be an overall thing, not just.
Council process for how they assign the salaries.
Yeah. But like last year, what we did in this group is we kind of went through, we didn't go through specifics and say, hey, Bob is making this much, and but what we said is, hey, here's the salary, here's the benefit expenses for a typical employee, and this is what it includes, and then here's how we figure out what the market's doing across the state for public employees. We had the URS guy come to council 6 months ago or something, and he said some stuff that it was hard to distinguish whether he was talking about the state in general or the city of North Ogden. And so it just might be helpful that, help the committee better understand that process.
That's
And
it.
I guess sorry, I talk too much sometimes, but what I think we're gonna focus on when we talk about individual departments is that discretionary. We're talking about training and equipment and things that are outside of the salary range. And so public safety, we can go through that and we can talk about those type of conversations. Training is always one of those things that we have a conversation with our folks every year. And it's the one that, as sales tax goes like this, it's the first thing we start trimming. In fact, I think, for example, with sales tax coming in a little lower this year, the recommendation that is gonna be made to council is that they not go to the Utah League of Cities and Towns training in St. George, because it's quite expensive, it's far away, and there's not a significant value, at least I was talking with Mayor Barker about it, and
They don't do a Zoom for that at all. Yeah.
no, they don't do a Zoom, but they have a fall conference here in Salt Lake that's fairly easy to get to, where people can drive down for the day as opposed to
I
paying for a hotel.
think I agree with that, except for the first year. The first year was awesome. Second year was like,
No, and that's a good point, is that maybe the
the new ones.
The new council members go and the other four don't.
Need to get that interaction and get some,
Yeah,
so they get the feel about what others are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I learned a lot from what Provo was doing, and I stole some ideas from that, and so, and can't remember, there was something else that came from that, but anyway. Oh, it was having a yearly vision, for the city thing, so that's where that came from, anyway.
I think one value to that is that it establishes a communication, so then they can just call and talk to each other. You know,
yeah,
if
you
they-
can
if
create a
they-
network of individuals, yeah.
Yeah, I'm too much of a learner, I wouldn't have, I didn't do that, but anyway. So I think if we send out the yellow sheets, at least for from last year, I can do that. And then, the current, because Peter, the one, budget that you sent the council is the one that's the current one, I think, right? During the meeting, you said that was the one that we should go off of?
Correct, the one,
Okay,
not the tentative one, but the one that got sent later on.
yeah,
That's
okay.
the one to go off of,
So I can send that, forward that to you guys and maybe what we should do is the next meeting at the beginning, because you'll get these things and go, what the crap am I looking at? Is to go through that.
Yeah.
And I don't know I don't know if we have time to even start that, but to just, I guess the assignment would be to look at them and see, what's going on and how, but.
I gotta step out, I'm gonna turn this
But I have
paper
it.
in,
kind
so.
of published.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well-
Excellent or not excellent?
I don't know. We'll see, depends how you
And
answer.
they're in our
Anyway.
accounting software.
Okay,
But, yeah,
thank you though.
No.
Anything else I can?
No.
2 weeks.
I think that'll be a good thing, and then I'll also see if we can queue up the recreation trends to kind of show you what that
Yep.
discussion might go like.
I think being up to each department, we have kind of, again, the history, that would be helpful moving forward, so.
Okay.
Cool.
And then we used a term you might not have heard, which is yellow sheets. Those who've done it before know what it is, but on the budget document, it'll give you a GL code that'll say 1049-500 is office supplies.
Okay.
And then on the yellow sheets, it actually breaks down what's in those office supplies.
Yeah,
It'll be
so-
like,
Yeah, this is what it looks like, the budget.
Thank you.
I don't know if you've seen it, and so, like he was saying, these codes on the side. But then the yellow sheets will take this number, that's a ginormous number, well, these are revenues, but expenses, and say, well, I think, for council, training, travel and training that we were just talking about, what goes into that amount? And then they'll say, well, it's,
it's this many
4
people.
people
at this
going to
conference.
blah, blah, blah conference, or for training, it's 2 hours online with, I don't know, whatever. So it goes down to those details and, like for computers, laptops, it'll say, well, we need 2 laptops this year, because of attrition or whatever, or just that John has a 17-year-old computer that needs to be replaced. That's while working the Windows 95 that probably should get a new one. Stuff like that's gonna be in there.
Mine
and-
is the oldest laptop, I think, in the city right now, so.
So anyway, so that's the kind of things and just to get your juices flowing as to, think of outside the box, just ideas that, these guys have been awesome and I think, they've always come with something different and I'm hoping Trent was online. And he'll come in person. He's like, yeah, this sucks. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't great, but, and then see, there was 2 or 3 other people that were not here, so.
Well,
we'll
and
have to see.
one thing that'll be helpful when you have a chair, but I think council member Polver can do it for now, is when you have ideas on what we should talk about at the meetings, email, and then, because again, I want, the agenda needs to be set by this group. And so, if you got something you want to talk about, then email it to this, right now, to Councilmember Polver, in the future to the chairperson, and then they can help manage that
Yeah,
agenda.
and it's finalized Thursday
Thursday
before. So, it'll be finalized the end of next week, so it can go out and you guys can have time to look at it and see what needs to feed into it. So,
And then the biggest time restraint we have is on Wednesdays, there's planning commission
that's it.
and at 6, and so you can keep talking, I guess, but I gotta leave at 5. so I can help get ready for planning commission meeting. So,
That's why we like made a deadline at 5, so.
and it
if we
also
finish-
allows you to go and get the rest of your life taken care of, right?
Yeah, if we finished earlier, great, but sometimes Brian's not here, so I can make fun of him. Sometimes with Brian, it goes to whatever, time that you have. So. Any,
So is our primary discussion that general fund? Or are we involved in all the enterprise funds too?
Yep, you'll get involved in the enterprise funds, and in particular, we'll have at least probably something in the February timeframe that maybe it'll be the second meeting. We'll want to talk about capital projects.
Yeah.
So you can see our 5 and 10-year plan, because that we spend a bunch of money on capital projects every year. And so it's good for this group to provide some feedback on that.
Yeah, cause I know, our big discussion, it seems always, is the property tax, right? That's what everybody, but the enterprise funds have rate schedules and everything
Yep.
that also impact people.
Yeah, a good
garbage,
example is,
yeah, garbage.
I live in the city. I spend 4 times as much in utilities as I do in property tax. But understand my house isn't super high up the hill and worth $1 zillion, but it's
Still, no.
But it's the average home in the city is paying $1,200 to $1,400 a year on utilities. So it's in theory more impactful than property taxes.
Yep.
So,
And we take that into account because it's hard to truly, with property tax, it's based on your valuation. So if there's something that we need a set fee for, kind of like the transportation utility fund, we didn't want to base it off of, somebody's value of their house because, it should be, exactly. And that's why, with a lot of the commercial, folk, they were gonna pay, based on what that was, but really they should have, anyway. There's a long discussion there, but, was there anybody online? I don't think we were done. Are there any other comments that committee had or whatever? I mean, we can keep going or call it staff comments. That was the only last thing on the agenda. So, so the 4th of February, right? That's the next Wednesday. Just trying to look it up.
yeah, that'd be the first Wednesday.
So 3 PM, we'll, right now, currently we'll have on the agenda we'll kind of go through the yellow sheets and the budget overall, but I'll send those out for public safety. And, I'm just gonna use last year's. That's probably the easiest way to do it. I think I have that, and if not, I'll let you know. But think about stuff as you're driving home, what does it cost to do this road construction they're doing over here? Or is there a better way to do potholes? Everything's on the table and some of it has been discussed, but if you don't ask it, you'll never find out. So, okay, last call.
I move we adjourn.